Welcome to the Grow Your Law Firm podcast, brought to you by Pilma. This podcast helps lead lawyers to more growth, profit, and freedom. Here is your legal marketing expert and host, Ken Hardison.
Well, hello, everyone. This is Ken Hardison, and welcome to another episode of Grow Your Law Firm. And today we have the honor and the privilege of having Robert Ingalls with LawPods. Welcome, Robert.
Ken, I appreciate it, man. It's such a pleasure to be here. After I've been a long-time listener and just some of the guests that you've had, it's an honor for me to be following some of them. So,
well, now, thank you. So, Robert, we're going to talk about podcasts, and it's kind of unique because I've been doing this podcast almost 3 years now, and I thoroughly enjoy doing it because I learn so much. I really do. I have some great guests like you, and I get to pick their brains and ask questions that I've always wanted to ask. And, it's fun. Like I've said, it's always easier to ask questions than it is to answer them. And I've been on both sides. I've been guest on podcasts. It's much easier to ask the question than it is to answer them. So tell me, we're going to talk about podcasts and your company, LawPods, but give me your story. How did you end up being president and the founder of LawPods? I mean, what got you to this point?
So I've thought a lot about it, and I really trace it back to 6 words, and those are, I want to have a baby. I think those have probably changed the course of a lot of lives.
Yeah.
And I had just gotten married, and about 4 months later after I got married, and my wife walks in while I'm packing to get ready for vacation, she says, I want to have a baby. And that was news to me because we got married and it was like, maybe we will, maybe we won't. And then all of a sudden, boom. And so I said, when? And she said, now. And I said, like, now? And she said, well, I've been taking my temperature and I think now is good. And I'd like to tell you that I handled that like an adult. But I kind of had a proper little freak out, mostly unbeknownst to her. And once I kind of recovered from that, I thought, I've got to get my shit together. Because at the time I had a small law firm, handful of employees, was really struggling to get it figured out and was working all the time, wasn't really making any money, super stressed and anxious. And I thought, I cannot add another thing to this. I can't add a child, expensive, also time. What am I going to do? And so I started thinking, like, what do I need to get together? The top of that list was money. How am I going to pay for this thing? So I read a money book, and then the book said, you should listen to our podcast. I'd never listened to a podcast. And so I pulled out my phone, I listened to the podcast, and the rest really is history. I was gripped immediately by the medium. Within 30 days, I owned the microphone I'm talking into now. I feel like this microphone says a lot about my personality. Go big or go home. And I just geeked out on it. I bought a mixer, bought all the cords, started figuring it out, started recording in my law office at night. And eventually I just stayed at it. Other lawyers started seeing me do it and started saying, hey, can you help us? Can we do this? Of course. Love to help you. I enjoy doing this. First client. And then it just kind of grew from there. And I said, I think there might be something here. I was watching the market as well. I was watching businesses get into it. I was starting to understand how podcasting could play a role in a content marketing strategy. Started going to conferences, and I had some mindset issues because for me, lawyer was safe path. I know it's wild to think, but you go to school, you get the degree, you take that test, you go to law school, you take the bar. Like, it's, as long as you follow the things, you're going to make it. And this was a completely different thing. There really wasn't a roadmap. And so it was kind of scary for me, but I said, I love doing it. I said, I think there's something here. So I kept at it, and it worked out. So that's the short story. Buy me a drink and we'll do the long one day.
Yeah. I went to one of those national podcasts. I was at another event, and this was going on at the same time. And I just bought a damn ticket and just walked in there and went, all the vendors always do that every time I go to something. I want to talk to every vendor in the world. And they were selling all this equipment and done for you and different things. And then I listened to 2 or 3 of their speakers. And there were people monetizing the hell out of it. I mean, they were just a lot of these guys make big money.
Yeah.
But it's like everything else. That's the small percentage. But
Sure.
But then again, it's like people writing bestseller books. Everybody can be an author, but always a few going to be like, go actually make money off the book, but you can make money off of the book a different way with
Right.
credibility, content. And I'm thinking that's the same deal with a podcast. I can tell you personally, Pilma has grown even during the pandemic, because we started doing this podcast, I guess, right at the beginning of the pandemic, and maybe a little bit before. But our membership has grown, and I think it's got a lot to do with people just listening. That people join now and they say, I feel like I already know you because I've listened to a lot of your podcasts. First time I've met you in person, they'll come to an event or I'm speaking somewhere, but I feel like I know you because I've listened to you so much.
Yeah, there's so much value in there. This long form content, you get to have a conversation with somebody, and you can't really hide in there either. That's one of the things I love about it is you're on the podcast once a week for 20, 30 minutes, and people are hearing you over and over and over again. They're getting to know you, and they get that sense for, okay, I got a beat on who this person is, and I either like them or maybe I don't like them. I think that's equally important.
Yeah.
And it allows people to get to know you in a way that if they were reading your blogs, which who has time to read a blog anymore anyway? I think that's why audio has exploded, because it sells you time. And it allows you to develop that relationship with people with this long form content. So if you do have a product and or service that you're trying to push behind it, now they like you. Now they trust you. So when you have something of value and you tell them, I think this is for you, they're going to believe you. They're going to trust you.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I always preach, people going to hire lawyers they know, like, and trust. And what better way to get to know and like, trust somebody than to listen to them on a podcast, unless you're just going to meet them and sit down and talk to them for an hour. So,
but even, I would say even listening to a handful of episodes, because that's where a lot of my clients find themselves. They find themselves with a podcast that really is intended to get somebody past the friction point of setting the appointment, answer a few questions, but they get to know them a little bit. And then when they do sit down for the appointment, they already know their voice. They already have a sense of their sense of humor. Yeah. And they are much further down the road to signing that agreement than they would have been if this was completely fresh.
So that's what I really want to dig into, because I've had, we do masterminds at Pilma, and we've had this conversation. How do you leverage a podcast to get business with your law firm? So what are your clients? Who are they interviewing? How are they using it? I mean, I think that's the thing that my listeners and viewers really want to know is, is it worth my time to do this? Because I'm busy anyway.
Sure. So two primary ways. The first and the most frequent is the FAQ style. Is, let's say I'm an injury attorney and somebody shows up on my website and something bad happened to them or someone they love, and they have questions, and they're there to hopefully get some answers, to get to know who you are a little bit, to understand if this is the person that we want to set an appointment with. And so we'll make a podcast that answers those questions. And we know what those questions are because we've been in every consult. We've heard them asked 1,000 different ways. We know what people want to know. And then we have our SEO reports. We know what people are searching for when they go to our websites, when they go to our competitors' websites. And that's the content that we're addressing. We're making an episode to address that specific pain point, to make that person understand that we're the expert. We've been here. We know what kind of pain you're in. And this is how it gets better. Like, here is your desired future state.
So do they just do solos where they just sit in front of the, mic and just, read out the questions and answer the questions, or do they have somebody interview them?
Both. So I think there is a lot of power in the solo episode, and trial attorneys I found do it better than most other attorneys. They're used to talking alone to someone, and I think there's a lot of power in saying, here's what we're going to talk about today. And especially if it's an emotional topic, here's what we're going to talk about today, and taking them through it. It doesn't have to be long. Just answer the question, but tell a little story about the time that you dealt with this and it got rough. And then here's the arc of it. And what happened next? Here's what happened next. because we want to keep them, paying attention. And that story helps a lot, but it also personalizes it. And it lets them envision you as this expert on the journey. And it endears them to you. Whereas the back and forth, I think, is great. Where you bring on, you see this a lot, where two attorneys from the firm will hop on a call and one will kind of lead the conversation. They'll ask the other attorney a question and then the attorney will answer it for the benefit of the listener. And I think that's great too. It's very helpful because you just want to get the information out there. So both of those ways are good. I find a lot of attorneys like to do the interview because for them, it's easier. It's easier to kind of pitch the softball because all these, these are all softball questions. We're doing this for the benefit of the listener and we're the expert, we know. And you kind of pitch the softball to them and you let them run with it. And that works out really well. But I encourage attorneys that are able to sit down and do those episodes by themselves to do that every once in a while, because I feel that they can be really impactful.
Yeah. I've done a few myself on this. I usually do them when I get behind because I try to stay ahead. But I can just knock out a couple, I can actually just take a PowerPoint that I've done and just talk about it. But it's harder to do solos than it is just to be asking questions or being asked questions. I like that format better for me personally.
Yeah, it's funny. You said you find it easier to ask questions than answer. I am the opposite. I'm just like, ask me anything and I will talk far too long about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I think that's the trial attorney in me.
So do you actually, your service, do you actually help them pick out the topics? Do you go into the SEO, the SEMrush and find out what the long tail lead, questions are?
Yeah, that's part of the startup strategy is mapping out a content calendar, understanding. And a lot of attorneys feel like that's going to be the hard part. What am I going to talk about? That's the easy part. It's really easy to map out 50 different episode topics right away. And, because we'll ask them, what are people asking you? But we work with the same kind of attorneys frequently. And so we already know too. Like we get to a point where we have a bank of the kinds of things people want to know. And they're jurisdictional specific stuff, but a lot of stuff, no matter where you are, it's kind of very similar stuff people want to know. So yes, and we like to talk to their SEO company. Is there something specific that we're working on, or their existing marketing company? Like, can we fit into this strategy?
Yeah. And I would think like equipment, the big deal is having like you do, a great mic. I've got, if you've seen mine, I've got one. Well, you can't because I've got the deal.
Oh, that's Blue Yeti, of course.
Yeah. Not as nice as yours, but I've got it. You really can't see it because I got the screen behind me because nobody wants to see my terrible office. Yeah. Do you pretty much do all the other legwork? Because we had a company doing ours, now we do it in-house because all I got is marketing people, right? Working for me. And techies and geeks. And so they know how to do all this stuff. But the first year we did hire somebody to help us with it because
sure.
But it's, and I know there's better software than what we have. We're using Zoom. I know there's better stuff out there, but
I like Riverside, Squadcast. Those are two options. If you're looking to upgrade, I like those because they record each participant on separate tracks and locally. So if somebody's internet connection goes in and out a little bit, they're recording it locally. So you're not going to get those little artifacts in the sound. It's all going to be recorded in high definition and then uploaded to the cloud. So it ends up getting a really good product, no matter who's on the line.
Do you recommend doing video and audio or just audio?
Definitely recommend both. And one of the reasons is there's no downside to it. There's massive upside to it.
Yeah.
The audio is great. People like to be able to listen to it because, I was saying earlier, audio sells you time. No other marketing can do that. It allows you to consume while you're at the gym, walking the dog, cleaning the house, whatever you're doing. But video still, people have an appetite for video. There's the most recent thing I saw in Pod News was 25% of people want to consume podcasts on YouTube. That blows my mind because from my anecdotal perspective, I wouldn't expect that. But what we see it in the numbers, though, we see it in some of the podcasts that we produce get more downloads on YouTube, depending on the demographic that it's serving, than the podcast itself does. But the really nice thing about the video is once you have it, now you can repurpose it. You can take that video in every 20, 30, 40-minute conversation. There's probably half a dozen at a minimum clips, little 60-second hits that you can clip from it, put on a branded template, throw some captions on it. Now you've got a TikTok video, Instagram Reels, Facebook, LinkedIn. You've got all of this ability from that conversation that you had that took you 20 to 40 minutes to sit down and have. You hand that to your marketing team and say, go.
Yeah. And does your company do that for them, or do they get their own people to do that as far as the repurpose?
We tell our clients, you do the talking, we do the rest.
Okay, so you do that.
Yeah, we do all of that.
That's going to be the big deal. A lot of law firms just don't have that massive amount of in-house marketing.
Yeah, it's in-house and it's lawyer time too. The lawyer wants, that's our value prop is the time investment you're going to make is going to turn into massively more value than you're going to give us, because we understand the value of the lawyer's time. And I understood that coming into the company, having been the person billing hours. And so we want to make sure that we're getting them in front of their computer, that they've got a decent mic they can plug right into their computer, have a conversation that takes 20, 30 minutes, hang up and not think about it again. We don't want them to have to worry about making sure that this goes out on YouTube or that it's on the blog or that it's edited right. We do that. You show up, you talk, and then we're going to take it and turn it into all the things it needs to be.
So thinking about this, what have you seen as the best route to go? Weekly, monthly, every other week?
So I think biweekly is a sweet spot for a lot of attorneys. And that's just something I've discovered working with so many attorneys, is from a time perspective, it's not hard at all to get an hour a month, because that's about what it takes to do a biweekly show. I always recommend batching too, is sit down, book an hour, do two episodes if you can, 30 minutes here, 30 minutes there, and you're done. That's 4 weeks of content right there. Now, if you've got the time and inclination, like we are firms that do weekly shows, they spend probably 2 to 2.5 hours per month with us. And a lot of times they'll try to record 4 or 5 at a time. And that way we're always getting some into the can. We like to be a month ahead when we can, no matter how many episodes you're doing. If you're doing every other week, you want to have two in the can. If you're doing every week, you want to have 4 at the beginning of the month, because trial comes up, something else hits the fan. But the time investment isn't great. But if you're thinking every Monday morning, I've got to record 1 episode, it can get out of hand real quick like that. And so that's why I sit down, record a couple at a time, and you're good.
Yeah. Yeah, because you do have to have, because it does take some time to edit them and put in I guess y'all do the show notes too. And
oh yeah, full editing, cutting out ums, uhs, awkward pauses, any time where you say something that you're like, oh my God, I shouldn't have said that. We've edited so many podcasts that the kind of things that people say and then don't realize they've said, like this was years ago, but somebody admitted to tax fraud without even thinking about it. And I just heard it. I heard it when it came through and I was like, you don't want to say that.
No, no, you cannot. Once it gets out, what is it? Somebody told me what has been said cannot be unsaid.
Right.
Once it's published, it's out there forever. You can't pull it back off the web.
Yeah. And that's why I haven't had an attorney yet ask me about wanting to do live streaming.
Yeah. And that's the other great thing about it. You can kind of do it on your timeline.
Yeah.
That's like, we've had, me and you for this one, I've had to reschedule it like 3 times because of my schedule, going back and forth to different events. And I was supposed to do it yesterday because we were going to do it today. And then I had to go to Utah to speak at an event, and I won't be back till today. But I decided to come home early because I was ready to get home. It was Valentine's Day. I was ready to get home.
I hear that.
And so I came on home. So then I wasn't able to do it because I was in the air when we were supposed to do it. And but we finally got it done. So I like that part of it. It's you can do them anytime you want to. I've done them on Saturday mornings. I've done them, when I do the solos, I usually do those on Saturday morning.
Yeah, and I was going to say the beauty of it too is the gear you need to pull it off is very minimal. you can get a microphone about that big microphone that plugs in your computer and a headset. So we have a number of attorneys that do international work that are constantly in a hotel room in Brazil and London, and they just bring their rig with them so they can record wherever they are.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So I guess these podcasts, you would put them on your website too for content, and then you would also, I guess, transcribe them out to make sure you got the Google juice for it.
Yeah, we do. We do all of that. We write the show notes, and definitely recommend putting the podcast in a listenable format on the website. With the new Google updates, it's early. We're still trying to figure out. We've seen some clients where we're pulling back a little bit on the amount that we're putting on the website. These long blog posts, these full transcripts. I'm not the SEO expert. I like to stay in my lane, but we work very closely with some of the premier SEO companies that are serving lawyers, so we can make sure that we are working together with them and staying ahead of things. So while we do that, there's still that's kind of an influx moment right now.
By the way, for people that don't, I just, once again, I'm sort of assuming show notes. What is that? I know what it is, but I want you to tell our listeners what it is.
It's a description. It's a description of what we talked about in the episode, the high points, kind of the main idea of what we talked about. And then I think it's really helpful to throw in some, you can do timestamps. Here we talked about this specific issue. Here we talked about this specific issue. Even if you don't do timestamps, just a few bullet points.
Yeah.
Here are the highlights of what you're likely to see, because frequently people will click on the episode and just give it a quick once over. Is this something I would even be interested in?
Yeah.
And the show notes are a really good way to let them know yes. And you want to put your links there. If we talk about things that the listener might find valuable, we want to link that there for them so it's really easy for them to find it. And then if we're trying to sell them something or get them to book an appointment, those links would be good to have there too.
Yeah. You could have like a report or a book, or like you say, an article, say, this link, or have your Calendly link set up where they can just go ahead and make an appointment.
Excellent lead source.
So yeah. So are you able, and this is because it's just got to where it's so hard to track anything anymore in marketing. Are the lawyers able to track whether or not this is helping them or not helping them, or whether they're getting leads or not getting leads? Or
so it's at its very core, it's content marketing. And it's the ability to track somebody who listens to a podcast on Apple Podcasts is very difficult right now. And, the consumer in me loves that. The marketer in me, bit of a different story. There's interesting things happening there where companies are developing technology to run ads in podcast where they can then retarget you if you've heard that ad with the service from the company. And again, the marketer in me really enjoys that. So it's not fully baked yet. It's, being able to track people is very difficult. Generally, you can get download numbers. You can see how many people listened on your website. You can see how many people listen on Apple, Spotify, wherever they happen to listen, what episodes are performing the best. But one of the best ways is attorneys have figured out the best information by just adding it in their intake process is, did you listen? Or just even asking it when you're in a consult and finding out there. But a lot of times I'm finding, because we poll our attorneys a lot to figure out what's working, what's not, so we can be serving them the best. And a lot of times people will say they've heard it. Like they'll just bring it right up, like, oh, right, on that episode you said this.
Yeah. So, I think sometimes you think, if you do a podcast that you're going to get 10,000 downloads a week or 100,000 downloads a week. That's not the way it's going to happen, is it?
Well, that's a good question, because one of the things I've seen is lawyers will sometimes come at this from the wrong angle. They will show up thinking they're going to start a podcast where they're going to talk about an interesting thing, but they also happen to be lawyers. And people will know they're lawyers. So when they need a lawyer, they will then call you. And I love the idea, but in reality, now you're competing with everybody. You are competing with the limitless amounts of entertainment out there. You're competing with Joe Rogan. You're competing with Brene Brown, the people who have been building these platforms for a decade or more that have a strong listenership And these are the things that people listen to when they're mowing the grass on Saturday. And if you are so good that you can break into that market and create a listenership that's valuable on its own, I think you have a new career on your hands. But for most of us, we should be making content that speaks to a pain point somebody's having. Now, maybe you have a community where there is a pain point and you are uniquely situated to address that pain point and your law firm can sponsor it. Great. I like that. I think that's a good play and it could be very valuable, probably a bit of a longer play, but I still think there could be value in it. But for a lot of people who are thinking, I want to create something that is going to have a faster ROI, the FAQ is one of the most valuable. Is what do people want to know? Give them that information, let them know what action to take after they listen to that. And then, the other one that we do pretty frequently is the Educating Referral Sources podcast. Michael Cowan, Trial Lawyer Nation, is one that we do. And he created this podcast 4 or 5 years ago. And it's all about educating trial lawyers. He's bringing on other trial lawyers to talk about verdicts and how they got them, talk about running a business, talking about voir dire, and just educating other trial lawyers. And the point is to establish his credibility and thought leadership, but also have people who get to know him, like him, trust him, and send him cases or want to work on cases with him. And, conversely, we have a comp defense. And that'll probably make some of your listeners angry, but you do what you got to do, right? And his referral sources are these adjusters. And he created a podcast where first he figured out, what do these people want? What do they want to know? And then the podcast is educating them on how to do their job better. A lot of form stuff. They don't know a lot about how the forms work. And so he just creates episodes. Here's how you do Form 19. And it's been really helpful for him because he's bringing in people that didn't already know him because they need the information that he has. So the Educating Referral Sources is another angle I think is very valuable.
That's pretty cool. I hadn't thought about that angle.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. All right. Anything that I didn't ask you that I should, or things people should know, these lawyers should know if they're thinking about doing a podcast?
Oh man, that's a dangerous question to ask me. I'm long-winded. No, the thing is that I think most people don't get is it's not terribly difficult. People see it and they see people like me with this mic and all of the wires, and they think I don't have time for that. And it's really not that difficult. We work with a lot of attorneys all over the place, and some attorneys are not necessarily that great at technology. And we've developed a system that makes it really easy. And just in general, there's a lot of technology out there that is really easy to use. And these microphones will plug, they're that big, they plug right into your USB port, and you're going to sound almost indistinguishable from the way I sound right now. These mics are good.
Yeah.
And they don't pick up a lot of background noise. They're made for office types of recording. And if you've got a computer and a webcam and an internet signal, you got a podcast. It really is that simple. And if you're working with an agency, it's that simple, because a good agency, that's all you should have to do. And they should be able to take it, grab it, and run with it.
I do have one more question. Have you seen any lawyers like add money to push out the podcast and add like some Facebook ads for it, or some TikTok ads, or some ad spin,
Yes.
or YouTube shorts or something like that? Have you seen anybody try that?
Yeah, we have. And they appear to be working really well. And that's the good thing about those video clips is they're perfect for running an ad. You grab something that you talked about. You didn't have to sit down and hire a film crew and spend a bunch of time trying to get just the right thing. You just started talking. And that's when we're at our best, when we're answering a question and we're just talking. We take that and you can cut that down into something really, really well done. And then that's perfect for running an ad, because you're running that ad based on usually something somebody wants to know about. And then you can put ad dollars behind it without having to spend a bunch of money in the content creation side of it. And those have worked really well. We've seen some injury attorneys doing stuff for Camp Lejeune, running ads for their podcast episodes that they've clipped for Camp Lejeune, for the acetaminophen stuff. And, full length YouTube videos, some ads there, some on Facebook, some on Instagram. And that seems to be working really well. We're not in the ad department ourselves yet, but it's on the radar.
Yeah, we tried it with Grow Your Law Firm, and it really helped.
Good.
I mean, yeah, we tried it first, just the Facebook. That did real well. Now we're doing YouTube.
Nice.
And we're still working on that, but it's trial and error. You gotta see
Yeah.
what works.
Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, we've seen the vertical content on YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, and TikTok. We've seen much better numbers there organically than we have on any of the other platforms lately.
Yeah. So if somebody wants to get up and learn more about how you can help them do their podcast, what I call a done for you deal, how can they do that, Robert?
LawPods.com. And really, if you type LawPods anywhere, you should find us. I thought about that when I was starting the business. I wanted a name that I could get all the social on, that made, that I feel like made intuitive sense. But yeah, LawPods.com. And then feel free to reach out to me about anything, Robert@LawPods.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, man. Until next time, this is Ken Hardison, dedicated to your success.
You have been listening to the Grow Your Law Firm podcast, the podcast that leads lawyers to more growth, profit, and freedom. Go to growyourlawfirm.com to find more ways to market and manage your law firm. Please leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts.